Hello kids! In our previous lesson, we have talked about numbers generally. We have seen the different classification of numbers. And the last thing we treated was integers, where I told you that we have the positive integers and we have the negative integers. And I told you that these positive integers are divided into two. We have the whole numbers and we have the natural numbers, where I told you that whole numbers is a combination of zero and what? Natural numbers, because natural numbers are the counting numbers. So let me illustrate something here before we come back to odd and even numbers, because we are going to talk about odd and even numbers in this lesson. So what are integers? Integers are numbers on the number line. Remember, I told you that where the origin, the middle number here is 0. If you move to the right, we have 1, we have 2, we have 3, we have 4, and so many other numbers up to positive infinity. If you come to the left, we have negative numbers, -1, we have -2, we have -3, we have -4, and so many other numbers up to negative infinity. Okay, so remember I told you that all what you are seeing here is what? Integers. Integers. And I told you that from this -1 to the left, all these numbers you are seeing are what? Negative integers. And these are what? Positive integers. But there's a misperception about 0. But altogether, including 0, we have what? What we call the whole numbers. Whole numbers. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever, we call them what? Whole numbers. And from 1, if you start from 1, meaning you ignore 0, you start from here, and anything to the right hand side, we call this what? Natural numbers. Natural numbers. We call these natural numbers. And natural numbers, I told you, they are the counting numbers, because we count things starting from 1. It is either 1 or 2 or 3. But we cannot count something as 0, where I gave you an example with my marker. I told you that this is one marker, a single marker. But if there are 2, we call them 2 markers. We cannot say this is a negative marker. This is why all these numbers from 1 to infinity are regarded as natural numbers. But this is not the point. In this lesson, we want to talk about odd and even numbers. These odd and even numbers are also integers, these numbers on the number line. But how can we differentiate the two? Let's start with odd numbers. Odd numbers are these integers that cannot be divided into 2 equal parts. But even numbers are integers that can be divided into 2 equal parts. So let me clean this and illustrate something. Let's assume we have 3 oranges here. And let's assume we have 4 oranges right here. All right. We want to find out which of these can be divided into 2. For example, I have a basket here, and I have another one right here. So if I want to divide these 3 oranges into 2, if I take this one, I place it here. I take the other one, I place it here. Where am I going to place the third one? If you place it here, you have 2 oranges here, but this remain 1, so they are not equal. For this to be an even, you have to divide it equally. Therefore, these 3 oranges, if we call it 3 as a number, 3 is odd number, because it cannot be divided equally. But coming here, if you take this one, you plug it here, you take this one, you plug it here, you take this, you plug it here, take the other one, you plug it here. So you can see that in each basket we have 2 oranges. So we have successfully divided 4 oranges into 2 equal parts. Therefore, we say the number 4 is an even number. 4 is an even number. So you get the point? All those numbers that can be divided into 2 equal parts, you share equally 2 parts, they are regarded as what? Even numbers. But once that number cannot be divided equally into 2, we consider it as odd numbers. Do not say any number, because I told you we have different types of numbers. We are only talking about integers. But for the sake of this lesson, we are only going to consider positive integers. I know negative integers can be even or odd, but since we are in lower class, we are going to consider only the positive numbers. So let's start with odd. Odd numbers. They are integers that cannot be divided into 2 equal parts. We can write some examples. All right. There's one thing you should observe since we are talking about positive integers. I told you that we have 0, we have 1, we have 2, we have 3, we have 4, we have 5, and so on, right? These are the positive integers, including 0, right? So if you're talking about odd numbers, this is the first odd number here, 1. Example, right? E.g. Then you jump 1, you go to 3. Jump 1, you go to 5. Jump 1, which is 6, you go to 7. Jump 1, which is 8, you go to 9. Jump 1, which is 10, you go to 11. So you keep on jumping one digit in order to get to the odd numbers. Likewise, if you're talking about even numbers, if you consider this one, you jump 1, you go to the next. Jump 1, you go to the next. So even numbers, they are integers that can be divided into 2 equal parts. So I'm going to write some example here. Example, e.g., we have 0. 0 can be divided into 2, but at this level, should we consider 0? This is a very lower class. I know the curious ones might ask, how can we share 0 into 2 equal parts? So this is for the higher class. Let me start with 2. You jump 3, you go to 4. Jump 5, you go to 6. Jump 7, you go to 8. We have 10, we have 12, we have 14, and so on. These are the examples of even numbers. But what if you have a bigger number? How can you determine whether that number is odd or even? So let's do that. All right. We have some random numbers here. We want to determine which is even and which is odd. Since they are bigger numbers, you cannot quickly determine whether they are divisible by 2 or not. Always consider the unit number. That is the first digit to the right. All these values, 7, 9, 8, 1, 4, 6, 5, 8, 2, the unit digits. If the unit digit is odd, the entire number is odd. If it is an even, the entire number is even. How do you see that? So what is 7 here? 7 here is an odd number. Therefore, 257 must be odd. 9 is an odd number. Therefore, the entire 689 is an odd number. 3,428. 8 is the unit digit. And 8 is an odd even number, sorry. So the entire 3,428 is even. 1 is odd, therefore 9,511 is odd. 4 is even, therefore 1,234 is even as well. Can you see that? 6 is even, therefore 8,956 is even as well. 5 is odd, therefore 11,135 is odd. 8 is even, entirely 2,478 must be even. And lastly, 2 is even, therefore everything here must be even. Can you see that? All right, so let us see some properties of even and odd when they are combined together. So let's see what happens if we add even number and another even number. What happens? Even plus even must give you even. I will give you an example. Think of any even number from 0 to 10. 2 is even, plus another even, 6. This is what? 8. 8 is even. Think of any even number plus another even number, you must get an even number. So what about odd plus odd? Odd number plus odd number. Odd number plus odd number must also be equal to even. We are going to try some of them. I know 3 is an odd number. I know 7 is an odd number. This will give us 10, and we know 10 is even number. So what about, let me see, a combination, right? Odd plus even. Once you try one example, all other examples must be the same. Example of an odd number is 7. Example of an even number is 4. So if you add these two together, you're going to get 11, right? So this is 11. And 11 is an odd number. Therefore, by adding odd and even together, you must get an odd. Another example, we have 2 plus 3, which is 5. You can see that this is even, this is odd, and the result is odd. So these are some of the things you should know in this lesson, that odd numbers are numbers that are not divisible by 2. Even numbers are numbers, sorry, did I say number? Not all numbers, but integers. Integers that are divisible by 2 are called the even numbers. Those that are not divisible by 2, they are what? Odd numbers. This is the difference between them. And I told you that in case of a larger number, if you want to determine whether it is odd or even, just look at the unit number. If the unit digit is even, entire number is even. If the unit number is odd, the entire number is odd. And if you add an even number plus another even number, you shall obtain an even number. If you add an odd together, you must get an even number. A combination of odd and even, you must get an odd number. So this is all I have for you today. Thank you for watching. You share Clear Learning Kids. Bye-bye.